I do a video called The Real Criminal History of John Key Exposed in 6 minutes. 33rd degree Freemason, Wall Street banker, Harvard educated, works for Anthony Krieger, who is the #1 most corrupt capitalist of all time. On official records, he's being like touted as that. Right, and we're talking about he's the head of bonds and derivative trading just before the 2008 stock market collapse, right, which was caused by derivatives, according to Money Magazine.
Insider information.
So I make that video, and then my YouTube channel gets taken down a week before the election goes out. All right?
Wow.
And then he gets re-elected.
John Key does?
Yeah. And then the next election, 3 years later, we do 3-year election cycles instead of 4. I put out his entire, complete criminal history, right? And it's like an hour and a half of content going through the man's past and how that actually relates to the running of New Zealand, and now he's part of the elite and his cronies and so on and so forth. And New Zealand elects him again.
Wow.
I can't believe it.
And then, all of a sudden, because we've been talking about John Key doing money laundering ops here by doing these massive casino deals and things like that in the city centre with huge major corporations, with government money, right? Just oh my God, you're using government money to literally give to private corporations so that they can make something that they will own and don't have to give you a share in? Why is that? This is the worst kind of socialism I've ever seen, and this guy's talking about free markets and this kind of thing. I was part in Wall Street and blah blah blah. Never seen anything like it. Wins 3 terms in a row, and then at the end of last year he goes, "Oh, I'm standing down now for personal reasons." And what? Like. There was a big portion of the New Zealand population who've hated this guy for his success for nearly a decade, right? The hate was palpable. Any anti-John Key protest was just like, yeah, it was just cheese for the mice that had been living off scraps for their entire life, man. They just poured into the streets in record numbers almost every single time. And then he just stands down all of a sudden. And a lot of people started celebrating, but I didn't. I started to see, oh my God, look into his case history again. Where was his first job? Oh, he was working as a Forex trader just when the New Zealand dollar got made public on the overseas market. At a time when he was in business with Andrew Krieger, who had enough money in a slush fund to purchase every New Zealand dollar that was available on the market, enough to tank our economy and shoot the price up of that dollar so that he could then sell it and make a hell of a lot of money, even if it cost 100,000 New Zealanders their jobs. That was his first freaking job, man. 1980 stock market crash caused by one guy, insider trading, who later became the Prime Minister.
And that his name is Key?
Mm-hmm. John Key. Yeah.
I can't believe this shit.
In the financial community, he's known as Inky. All right?
Really?
Because he's a slippery squid of a character. And maybe it's because whenever he does something like that, the country that he's working in or the company he's working for will collapse. So first time he did that, New Zealand economy in the 80s collapses, 100,000 Kiwis out of jobs. Okay. Next time that happens, it happens to Merrill Lynch, where he was one of their lead representatives on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Merrill Lynch goes under, gets swallowed up by Bank of America, which John Key now owns shares in. He then goes on to the board of the Bank of New York, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, does a whole bunch of work in Ireland, and then he puts all his money into blind trusts, leaves Ireland, comes back to Wall Street, and the Irish tiger economy blows up. He then starts to work on Wall Street a little bit more, selling more derivatives, and then he leaves Wall Street and comes to New Zealand. And then the Wall Street 2008 financial apocalypse happens.
Oh my gosh.
And in the same year, he gets elected Prime Minister of New Zealand, saying that he will help save us from this financial crisis. And in the 9 years he was Prime Minister, we went from $8 billion in debt. This is all previous New Zealand governments combined. There's about 180 years odd of debt, $8 billion to about $200 billion in 9 years.
Wow.
He raped the economy.
And this is the beautiful part right here. And it still makes me... Sir John Key. He got a knighthood.
My.
He just handed it right over, didn't he?
No, just say the words, Sir John Key. Just once, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me it doesn't make a phlegm ball of explosive proportions arch up in the back of your throat. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I really hate the guy. And it was a really...
So, you talked about him being a Freemason, and what do you think that has done to help him to do what he's done?
Well, he's not just a Freemason, he's also a banker. He's also Harvard educated. He's also connected with the globalists, and he's also Jewish. Right? Just all coincidences, a Freemason Jewish banker became the Prime Minister of New Zealand. All right? And Freemasonry is very strong in New Zealand. In fact, the Beehive itself, our Parliament building, was designed by a Freemason. It's the ideal Masonic society of order with a queen at the top and all the workers and slaves underneath. And it has a black and white tiled Masonic floor inside Parliament, and that's a Masonic theme, which means that there is dark, like lies, murder, deceit, that kind of thing, and there is light, truth, compassion, etc. And they believe that they need to use both in order to maintain control. So they'll tell you the truth and they'll care about you on occasion, but most of the time they're just lying to you and killing you. And when you look at how governments work and operate, that's kind of what's happening, isn't it?
Yeah,
they kill you as they care for you. Isn't that loving? Isn't it psychopathic?
Very true.
So in terms of being a Freemason coming into thing here, it reminds me of, I think, might be the Honourable John Banks, who's a 33rd degree Freemason in New Zealand here, who got given a donation by Mr. Kim.com. And Kim.com was asked by him to split the $50,000 check into two $25,000 checks, because you don't have to report where your donations come from if they're under the $30,000 mark. And when this was touted up in the media as being some form of corrupt practice, which it is, John Banks immediately went to the police and admitted that he did it. Now, he's a former police commissioner. He went to court, and the evidence was overwhelming, right? Pretty straightforward, open and shut case. And the trial went on for months and years. And eventually, they go, okay, you've breached the public trust, you've broken this law, which carries a minimum 8-year sentence in jail, you've broken this law, which carries a minimum 2-year sentence in jail, but in New Zealand, we don't serve those consecutively, they all get smoshed onto the up, so talking about 8 years possible in jail. And then the judge, who just so happens to be a Freemason, goes, but despite all these crimes and everything like that, you've done such great work for the community as the mayor. You've stood for honourably in Parliament as the leader of the ACT party, which basically rubber stamps it. We've got like tiny little parties that mix in with the big parties here. And because you've done all of this community work, and he just keeps rolling down this list, right? And I'm sitting there in the courtroom thinking to myself, oh my God, he's going to let him get the frick away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So he keeps saying this down, and he winds up getting with curfew on the weekends after midday, right?
I mean, he can't even go to the pub. I mean, what's that?
Okay, and so we chased him down.
Probably has a pub in his house.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
So we this by itself, however, was a landmark case, because the only time that a private prosecution had been brought against a corrupt politician and actually convicted him. First time it had ever happened. This was big, man. This was big. This was huge. It was a media scrum of scum that was just... I'd never seen anything like it before. What questions did the media ask him? Oh, so what are you going to do now, Graham? He was the prosecutor. What are you going to... And he goes, oh, well, I'm going to go home and probably do my washing or whatever. Oh, that's a nice suit you're wearing. Oh, my God. Just... There's a time in the justice system when you see that justice really doesn't work, because at that point, I think it should have been legal to stab people just, for asking questions like that. Just in the throat, arterial spray.
You ask him any questions.
I did. And I asked some questions about what this sets as a precedent for corruption being in New Zealand, seeing as on Transparency International's list we're the least corrupt country in the world, which I think reflects the reality that we are the best country in the world at concealing our corruption.
Yes, you're number one.
And we actually have the third most out of all the countries in the world, including India and China and all of these kind of places. We have the third highest per capita homeless population.
I did not know that.
Wow.
We don't even have a constitution, right? The Bill of Rights are just kind of general guidelines rather than rules and stuff like that. And
is there just an amazing amount of natural resources there? Like y'all just got all the coal, all the natural gas, everything you can just imagine. How many people live in New Zealand?
Okay, I'm glad you touched on that. Because
and do y'all just get a check? Shouldn't you just get a check every month that there's only about 500,000 of y'all and then you got all this natural resources?
Nah. What we'll do is we'll do exactly what happened to Brazil, what happened to Yugoslavia, what happened to every single country that's accepted World Bank loans, got in massively in debt, then get exchanged for natural resources. All right, so now previously unexplored oil reserves, untapped gas reserves, unmined national parks
are owned by banks now.
Unfracked waterways, all of these pristine things which we deem natural capital, like you'd have to pay a lot to live here, so it's in the public trust, so it's beauty that everybody can enjoy for free. That's what called natural capital. However, if you put a strip mine there, and you use, I don't know, let's say 1 million litres of sulfuric acid in order to get all the minerals out that you want over the course of time. And let's say you use, I don't know, 1 billion litres or so of natural, fresh New Zealand river water that you divert per year in order to do this kind of thing. It's just natural resource rape after they get the country in debt. Tale as old as time, even older than Beauty and the Beast.